What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome back to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Augie Johnston, and I'm here with my partner, Alex Engel, and we hope you take away something from this episode that you can use to improve yourself as a coach, a player, or whatever you are in this game. Today's episode, we're talking about screening. So if you're a player, let's learn how you can use screens to become a better player. And if you're a coach, let's see if you can understand some different concepts when it comes to screening to help you out as a coach. So, all right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. All right, you guys, as planned, we are talking about screening today. And the first thing that we are going to talk about is just why screens are important. So we're going to jump right into this, and I'm just going to throw the first question straight to you, Alex. Why are screens important? Why are they even a part of anyone's offense?
I think the main thing for screens is just it's a good way to help get your teammates open and to just create separation from the defense. That's probably pretty basic, and most people will probably know that. But as opposed to just playing a complete isolation ball or even just passing and moving around freely, where the defense can really react and they can get in your way and they can kind of stop you from what you want to do. I think screens create advantages and space between the offense and defense that give you more opportunity to score and just to create a better overall offense.
Yeah, no, totally agree. There's so many kinds of screens out there, and we're going to dive into all of them in this episode, and even talk about a few offenses at the end of this episode that use screens and are kind of screen-based. But when it comes to setting off-ball screens, like how would you say that you set an off-ball screen? Like what is some technique maybe, and just dive a little bit into maybe what an off-ball screen is too?
Yeah, and I think when you talk about screening, you have to talk about both the person setting the screen and the person using the screen. I think a lot of times when people think screening, they're just thinking the person that's setting the screen and that's it. And it's really a two-piece situation because if they're not working together cohesively, then the screen really isn't going to be effective. So for off-ball screens, first, the screener themselves, they got to make sure that they take a good angle wherever they're trying to set that person up. They want to make sure their chest is to that defender so that they can get a good piece of them when they set the screen. Obviously, they got to be set, got to have their feet set. They want to try and have as wide of a stance as you can get and still be on balance. If you're really narrow, then again, you're going to give more room for the defense to get around you. So you want to be more wider set. And again, being on balance, because then you can move out of it. And also, if you do get hit, you're not going to just fall over and, trip up the rest of the play. So you got to be balanced. And then I think on the other side, the person receiving the screen, you have to do a good job of setting up your man. So if it's an off-ball screen, you usually want to take some type of a cut. Maybe it's a little step-in V cut, whatever it is, to try and bring that defender down and towards the basket so that then you can use it and come off. And, in this case, I'm thinking kind of like a screen away or maybe a pin down screen. And you want to make sure that you come right off the screener's shoulder. And that's the main thing I see at all levels that people struggle with is using the screen and coming off shoulder to shoulder. And I know probably everyone listening to this is like, God, I've heard that so many times. But it really makes a big difference because any gap you leave between the screener and the person using it, the defense is going to be able to push you out, get their body in there, get their hand in there, and either push you out from even using the screen at all effectively, or just get a steal if the pass comes and they can get their hand in there and deflect the ball away. So those are some of the basic tips I think of when I think of screen setting.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point there about it takes two, right? It's the guy, he's got to be patient and wait for the screen. You hear that so much, wait for the screen, and the guy that sets the screen. And then I think kind of the next level to screening is reading screens, right? I mean, if the defender slips under, then you should do something different if he trails you. And so I think that's another reason when we say, why are screens important? Why do we use them? Is because it allows this situation, I think, where the defense has to make a decision, right? Are we going to slip it? Are we going to go over? And that just creates an opportunity for the offense to make a read. And if they do make the right read, I think that's where you're able to gain that advantage, like you were saying. Okay, so that's a little bit about off-ball screens. Let's talk a little bit about on-ball screens and how you would teach somebody to set an on-ball screen.
Yeah, I think again it depends on where the screen's being set. Generally, I like if I'm if I'm playing or if I'm someone coaching on my point guard coming off the screen, I like it to be on the wing. I that's just an area that I like. I don't mind in the middle either. I mean, there are great on ball screens in the middle either, but typically you see a lot of screens coming from one of the other wings. So I like my screener to come up and kind of do almost like an L cut. So if they were standing at the block, come up straight to the elbow and then come straight across, because then you've got that nice flat screen. That's their chest is kind of aimed towards the sideline, and the guard can come off and get right into the middle of the paint. And that's usually what you're trying to do. You're trying to get your point guard or whoever it is with the ball into the middle of the paint. So I teach my big to come up, or whoever it is setting the screen to come up, turn their body, face that sideline, set that screen. Same idea as the off ball gets set. Make sure your feet are steady and you're balanced. You don't want to move. You don't want to lean, so you don't get an on ball or offensive foul. But on the other side, I think it's even more important for a ball handler to be patient. And all screens you have to be patient on, but especially on ball screens, you got to be patient and you got to get low with the screen. And if you're listening, you don't know what that means. That means that you are going to try and dribble down your defender beneath, either at the same level or lower than where the screen actually is, so that when you come up and go around it, again, you get the bigger piece of that defender. You can create more separation. And it opens a bigger pocket for if they're going to come off and you're going to screen and roll, you're going to have more room to throw that bounce pass, and you have more room to get into the paint. If you don't get level with the screen and you stay above it, usually you're just going to dribble over that defender is going to push you up above the screen, and you're not going to have many options coming off of it. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one good strategy, I mean, obviously you never want a player to not be able to use the screen and not come off shoulder to shoulder, but this is just as a little side note. I've seen where if there is a screen being set and you're going to set a screen for somebody, an on-ball screen, and all of a sudden the guard didn't do a good job, like you said, getting the level of the screen and coming off, then you should just slip it at that point, because you're not going to get a piece of anybody. You might be able to at least get ahead of your defender or something like that. But okay. So wing ball screens, that's what Coach Alex is looking for, to come off the wing ball screen. What do you want your screener to do after they set the screen there? Do you teach them to roll or to turn and run, or how do you normally like that?
Roll, and it's very specific with the footwork. You want to open up people say like a door. You'll want to open up like a door, because you never want to turn your back to the ball. That's what I've always been taught, and that's what I always teach is, if you set the screen and then you just kind of run forward and make that little turn, which I think is what you were describing there, your head's turned away from the ball and you can't see it. So if a pocket pass comes really quickly, by the time you turn, you might not be able to catch it, or you might be wide open, but you're not available to look. And sometimes a split second is all it takes for you to miss an opportunity. So I definitely think you got to open up like a door. You kind of swing open as that player comes off your shoulder. You're going to swing open so that your chest is to the ball and you can constantly see what's going on as you roll. You want to have a high hand, obviously. I'm not opposed to players popping if they have that skill set, but I just don't like when they pop every single time. You've got to be able to mix that in. I would say you probably want to roll more than you pop, unless you're very specific big man that's like a sniper 3-point shooter. But that's generally, those are like some of the things that I'm looking for on the screener side.
Cool. Yeah. We didn't really talk too much about like the aftermath, right? Like if you go and set a screen, like you don't just set the screen and just stand there, right? You should always open to the ball or turn and try to get a catch, or, maybe slip or space out into an open space. So, all right.
And
So
I was going to ask you one other thing. Are you a fan of, coming up and with the fist high and making it known that you're setting the screen? Because some coaches love that. And there are coaches that are like, no, I don't want anyone to know. Not that it's a secret, but like, oh, we don't need to do that. We know the screen's coming.
I'm a fan of the signal and then the jump stop right into the screen. But yeah, I do teach that. How about yourself?
Yeah, I like that as well. I think it just makes things clear. It also can hopefully help that guard stay more patient, because they know it's coming and they know, okay, I'm going to just wait until the screener gets here and then I can go off. So.
Yeah, and I like it too, because we're talking about on-ball screens, right? Signaling that you're setting an on-ball screen, but I like it for any kind of screen, because it's pretty clear, right? Like you said, some coaches say we know a screen's coming. It's pretty clear on an on-ball screen normally, but off-ball screens, all of a sudden 2 players are near each other. I might just back screen, or something like that. And I think it really helps to communicate who's setting it, because you see it in youth basketball, right? 2 players run to each other, they both jump stop like they're going to screen each other. And you're just like, wait a second now.
What are you doing? Yeah. And I think the deception that you get from not set, like from not doing this, the slight deception you get maybe every once in a while doesn't outweigh the benefit of constant communication. Because I think communication almost at any point is key. So,
Yeah. In a perfect world too, I mean, there's no right answer. You know the screen's coming, so you're gonna jump it. All right, well, I'm gonna slip it. I mean,
right.
you know,
Right.
in a perfect world, I wish it was that easy and that as players we all made the right reads all the time, but we don't. But as coaches, we want our players to get there.
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about screen. Let's talk a little bit about the different types of screens. And first, we'll just talk about like your basic fundamental type screens, and then we'll get into what we kind of called scripted screens, whether they're part of a certain offense or something like that. But what are some fundamental screens, or like the main screens you would think of?
First one would probably be like a pin down screen. So that's, you got a guard on the wing and someone's going to set them a screen as they're like kind of towards the block. They V cut down to the block, come back up, get that screen and pop up for a shot. On ball screens are another one that I think of. Pretty much every offense uses some sort of on ball screen, or at least every team has some sort of offense that uses an on ball screen. I'm trying to think. We talked about block to block screens. That's kind of a very basic one. And I think we talked about this earlier, that not a lot of teams necessarily use that anymore, but it is a very basic kind of old school screen. I'm trying to think, what are the ones off the top of my head? Any other ones you can think of that I'm missing?
Yeah, so as far as the ones you just named, and the block to block screen, also called like maybe a cross screen or rip screen. Just a little side note, we'll talk more about this, but I love that screen. I think that's a great screen, but you have to be tricky with it. It can't just be a screen that you know it's coming. But a few other screens maybe would be like a back screen. You see it's pretty common, back screen, or I don't know exactly what you would call this, but pass and screen away. Whether you're 5-out space and you're at the point and you pass and screen away, I guess that's technically some form of a pin down or down screen, but I just call it an away screen. But yeah, I think those are the main screens that you're going to see. But there are a ton of scripted screens as well. And so a few that we talked about earlier that I'll just go ahead and list off right here, and then we can just maybe talk a little bit about what maybe one or two of them are, is like an elevator screen or a double staggered screen, or when someone comes off like a double screen at the elbow, like an Iverson cut screen. And even like horns action, like these are essentially, right, horns is a pick and roll, but or it could be a lot of other things. But what exactly is an elevator screen?
So elevator screen is usually, most of the time when I've seen it, it's at the top of the key. It's right around that free throw line area, and you've got a runner or someone coming straight up. They usually cut from the wing or something like that and end up down by the paint. And they're coming straight up the middle of the key towards the 3-point line, and usually both bigs are sitting there. And as that guard comes through, they close the elevator doors and catch the defender. I actually think that's probably one of the hardest screens to do effectively because it's so based on timing. And I think, don't get me wrong, there are other ones that are hard as well, but just that, getting that timing where if the offensive player doesn't get enough space between them and that elevator doesn't have enough room, you're going to be chopping your own player, or you're going to get a moving screen really easily, So, but I've seen some teams that run that really well. And if you get the elevator screen, I mean, there's really nothing that can be done because they block that guard so effectively that if you got a shooter there, like it's a really good play.
Yeah. I love the elevator. I think it is difficult to pull off, but I think as long as you have like some sort of pre-action, whether like the guy who's about to come through it just set a cross screen or something, so his guy helps out for half a second and that will give you the chance. But I think it's hard to guard too, because like, what do? Do you trail it, or do you try to slip through it? As the guy who's guarding the guy who's coming, the shooter, like how do you guard that, and how would you guard that, I guess, is the next question.
I think if you trail it, and you're saying trail kind of like as in go around the outside and try and catch them before they go through, is that what you mean? As opposed to like jumping it on the same side as the ball?
Yeah, I guess jumping it on the same side of the ball, I would consider maybe slipping it.
Okay.
Trailing it, I would consider maybe you're never going to go on the other side of it. So I guess going through it.
I think you try to go through, because in a perfect world, like you said, you don't get lost, hopefully, and you try to go through. But I think realistically, if you get caught, you got to send one of your bigs up to hedge for a second. That's really the only thing that I can think. You send a big up to hedge, the other one maybe drops back. Yeah, are you kind of at a disadvantage because you could have your big up and your point guard trying to get through, and then only one big back guarding two? Yeah, that's a possibility. But I think if you can do that in a way and you have help side there, you can kind of clog up the paint so that there's no direct pass straight for a layup. Because that's I think would be the fear of if you send one of your bigs to come hedge for a second, and kind of hold that guard there while your guard gets through on defense, that you're going to give up a wide open shot in the paint. But I think there's ways with help side to just clog it up, and it's hard to make a pass into the interior like that. So I think that's probably what I would go with.
Nice. I totally would switch it. I'm a switch fiend, so no matter
Straight
what,
switch, huh?
I would just switch it.
Kemba Walker in in the Big East Finals, just point guard on a big, huh?
Well, that's different if it's the last shot of the game. We
Yeah,
would switch it anyways. I'm a fan of switching, so
yeah.
I live with that stuff.
I think it depends on personnel too. Like if you've got switchable players or if you've got a big that's like somewhat mobile, then yeah, I would probably agree with that. You just switch it on that play because they're probably not running it every single play. So you switch it a handful of times a game and you live with the results. I can see that, but I think it depends. If you've got like a really slow, lumbering 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guy and they got a quick shifty point guard, like that's going to be a really bad mismatch. So I just think it depends on your own personnel and their personnel too.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone has their own philosophies on switching. The more and more experience I get in coaching, it just makes me like to switch. I don't know what it is, but that's my philosophy on defense. So we'll see. We'll see about this year if we're going to be switching a ton. But let's keep with the screening. So that was elevator screens. We don't need to go through all these. Double staggers away is obviously a double screen. The Iverson cut is like a player on the wing running across the free throw line, getting two screens right on the elbows and getting a catch on the wing. Let's talk a little bit about some different offenses now that are kind of maybe known for screens. Like there's a lot of maybe off-ball screens, on-ball screens. I don't know. So what's one offense you can think of that comes to mind?
I'll go with the flex offense. I know you probably thought I was going to say pick and roll, but I'm going to go with the flex offense. Where you got usually the screen coming from the wing the screen from the block as the wing cuts through to the opposite block, and then a down screen after that screen just happened. Again, I wish I could draw it. It's a little bit easier than verbally talking about it, but basically you got a cutter going through from one wing to the other block off of a screen, and then that person that just set the screen gets a pin down basically from kind of what would you call it, the slot, I guess, and comes up straight up there. And it's actually continuous motion. That's like the basic flex. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff off it, but a lot of screens and back cuts in that.
Yeah, I love flex. And have you ever seen the flex offense ran with a back screen on that where he sets the flex cutter comes through, and then instead of a down screen, a back screen?
Oh yes, yeah, I have. Yep. Definitely seen that before. Usually that's like an option off of something. I haven't seen it much as a continuous motion off that, but I mean, I guess you could do it like that as well.
Cool. I definitely want to experiment a little bit with that this year. Okay. So flex, one that comes to mind to me is, I don't know the exact name, but it's the offense that Kansas has ran for years. It's like the high-low offense. It's like 3 out, 2 in spacing. There's a lot of screening action. Cross screen, block to block. That's like kind of one of the main cores of the offense. But there's also pass and screen away. So it's 3 out, 2 in. A lot of ball reversal, and it'll be a big on little screen away, which we didn't really talk about. But in screening situations, it's always best to have a big on little screen or a little on big screen, just so that the defense can't just automatically switch it. But yeah, so this offense, it does have a big on little, pass screen away, has cross screens with the bigs down low. And it even has what I guess you would call a down screen, where if the ball is at the point and there's a guard in the corner, that wing can, a guard in the wing and the corner, that wing can screen down for the corner. So you get like a little action off that. And it's also a ball screen offense as well. So it's can flow like kind of the rule is any post touch, and they're trying to get a lot of post touches. Any kick out, you go automatically into a ball screen, into like a 3-out 2-in type ball screen. And it's also a continuity to where, it just never ends. It's a pattern that you can repeat. I've seen teams run it with a little bit more motion principles, where it's a little bit more free flowing, which is awesome, but I think difficult. Is there any other kind of offenses that come to mind? I mean, there's so many that do, but some offenses don't, right? But is there anything else you can think of?
I mean, obviously, like the pick and roll. You're going to be using the screens all the time in that type of an offense. I'm trying to think outside of that. I've got to be forgetting one. Anything else you can think of?
Well, I think if you can think of any kind of offense like the UCLA offense, where it's like you're coming off a UCLA screen, which is a back screen, or
Right.
like the Princeton offense with the chin action and that kind of stuff. But anything that, I mean, if we really sat down and just listed out a whole bunch of offenses and looked at them all, I think there would probably be screening in about 90% at least. Because really the only offense I can think that doesn't have any is like just like 4-out 1-in, like read and react, pass and cut type of offense.
Right.
Anyways, yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about maybe screen techniques and reading screens. So as far as slipping a screen, when would a player, or what is slipping a screen, first of all, and when would a player want to do that?
So slipping a screen is, if you're coming up to set the screen and normally you set it and you make contact and then you would roll. Slipping the screen is, instead of making contact, you come up, you signal like you're going to set the screen, and then just before that screener comes off, you just cut straight to the basket. And in an ideal world, you leave both defenders kind of stuck up there, and you got a nice easy layup for the big. But it doesn't always work that perfectly, but that's the main concept of slipping a screen. And when to use that, when a screen's getting doubled, like if there's a trap on a screen, you can slip. And a lot of times in defenses that trap, they're going to try and take away that slip. So you're probably not going to get a layup, but it's kind of like a pressure release, right? Pass to you, and then you might have another cutter to the basket. Or if a team switches and they come up high and they're about to switch it, if you slip before that guard can get beneath the big, you're going to have a roll and easy, cut to the basket. So those are a couple of times that I can think of that you'd want to slip the screen.
Nice. So those were both, that was an on-ball example, right? Both on-ball examples. So what about like slipping a screen, setting an off-ball screen?
So kind of the same concept, just kind of deception. So one thing I think of is maybe you're setting like a flare screen, right? And before that screen comes, when there's a hedge or maybe a switch or something like that type of a situation, someone's trying to guard that skip pass, you just slip straight to the basket. You get a nice dive for a cut and a layup. And you can do that really in any situation that uses that type of an off-ball screen. But that's the flare. I've seen that a lot, where they're setting that screen and then boom, cut to the basket, layup, because it's deceptive. You think they're looking for a 3-pointer. In reality, they're trying to set up a layup.
Yeah, nice. Okay. That's another screen that we didn't talk too much about, the flare screen, but one that I think is a great screen, even if you are screening for a shooter, or even if you're a shooter yourself, to be able to pop out and catch and shoot. Also back screens, right? If you're a shooter, set a back screen, you might get an opportunity to pop and catch and shoot. The only other thing about slipping that I can think of is, and something that I love to do when I play, is if we're in like 5-out spacing, or I'm playing point guard and I have the ball up top, pass, screen away, and then slip that on a switch or something like that. But I think that teams that understand how to slip, you can get a lot of easy ones. Like that can really be like a thing that produces points for your team.
Yeah, I think one other one that I know actually probably playing with you is the way I've noticed it the most is is setting the screen and then slipping it, but instead of slipping it to the basket, you like slip flare, kind of like you slip and pop almost to the 3-point line. And I know that's something that like we've done playing together, and I've seen it every once in a while, but it's not that common. But you come up, set that screen, and then instead of just slipping straight to the basket, you kind of like curl around to the 3-point line for a little kickback shot. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That works really well. If you've got a big that can shoot, or it's like almost like a guard on guard or something like that, and they can shoot, it creates enough space to give you room to either catch and shoot, or catch and attack a closeout. So I like that one.
Yeah, me too. And that almost kind of reminds me of just another thing that I love as a shooter is what you can call maybe ghosting screens, or it's slipping the screen, right? Like let's say we're coming down in transition, and I'm going to set like a drag screen for the point guard, and they know it's coming and we're in flow. Like I might not even set it, like, especially if I know they're going to switch it, I might just slip it and not even like just fake it, ghost it, and then pop to the other side, catch and shoot. I think that's another effective way to, use a screen where you're not really even using the screen. I guess it's more of a read. We're talking about just reads off the screens now a little bit. But that's a super effective way. Okay. Well, as far as screening goes, is there any other little thing that you want to add to the conversation?
Just like it's just techniques or kind of anything. I guess my main thing is if you're trying to teach the kids to screen, or if you're listening in and you're trying to be a good screener, first of all, understand that there is a lot of value in being a good screener as a player. I love playing with bigs that can set good screens and that can roll effectively off them. Having good footwork, understanding those basics is so important, and it's not a glamorous thing, and it's not going to show up in the stat sheet, but if you're a really good screener, coaches will love you. So just understand that. And then I think just teaching it, just understand that you've got to be willing to make contact. You can't be afraid to make contact, and you've got to be on balance, and you got to stand still and be patient. I think patience with screens is just the biggest thing on both sides of the ball, whether you have the ball in your hand or whether you're on an off screen or whatever. I just think that so many kids get in such a rush because they're like, oh, here it comes. I got to go. And they don't even get any value out of the screens because they're in such a rush to use them that they just leave big gaps for the defense to get through.
Okay. Nice. I agree with all that too. So, okay, guys, my last little 2 cents on this thing is just, hey, if we did an episode about cutting, we've done episodes about a lot of different things, but if you are a player and you want to be a good player, learn the value in the art of screening, because that's really, we barely scratched the surface on this, honestly. This can go really deep. There's so much misdirection. There's so much screen the screener. There's so much different types of screens that, we didn't even talk about the flare screen and all the different options off that. But yeah, screening, it's one of my favorite things. It's one of the things that I think my high school coach taught us the best was screening. And that's about it. That's all we got for you guys today. So thank you so much for watching. If you like today's episode and you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit like. If you're watching on iTunes, make sure you subscribe there. We release a new episode once a week. So we will see you guys in the next episode.